I arrived at the Carter house right on time. Melissa had called me 2 days earlier and said, "Mom, we're having dinner at Elaine's this year. You should come." Her tone wasn't warm. It wasn't even neutral. It was the kind of voice people use when they're checking something off a list. But I said yes. I always did. When I walked up the steps and rang the bell, I heard voices inside, loud, cheerful, comfortable. Brent opened the door. "Oh, Catherine," he said, as if he had expected someone else. "Come in." He moved aside without smiling. He didn't take my coat or offer to help with the small gift bag I held. I stepped inside on my own. The living room was crowded. Coats were thrown over chairs. Plates and cups covered the coffee table. Music was playing, and people were talking over each other. No one turned around. No one said hello. Melissa saw me from across the room but didn't get up. She was sitting beside her mother-in-law, close enough that their shoulders touched. They were laughing at something Elaine had just said. I waited a few seconds. Melissa finally lifted her voice. "Mom, you can sit over there." She pointed to a chair at the far corner of the dining table, the one near the hallway, away from everyone else. She didn't stand. She didn't walk toward me. She didn't say Merry Christmas. I took my seat quietly. I'm not the kind of woman who makes a scene. I watch. I listen. I understand more from silence than people think. Dinner was served quickly. The conversations went on without pause, about ski plans, new appliances, Brent's business expansion. A few people glanced at me like they weren't sure who I was. I didn't mind. I wasn't here for them. Melissa stayed glued to Elaine's side. "You look beautiful tonight," she told her, adjusting the older woman's necklace. Elaine smiled like she owned the moment. Brent kept his hand on Melissa's chair, showing the whole room his version of a picture-perfect family. None of it involved me. After the dishes were cleared, Melissa stood up. "Okay, gifts," she announced. Everyone moved to the living room again. I followed last. Elaine sat in the center of the couch. Melissa placed a velvet box into her hands. "This is for you," Melissa said softly. "For me?" Elaine asked with a dramatic gasp. "You shouldn't have." "You deserve it." Elaine opened the box. The diamond necklace caught the light immediately. Large, bright, expensive. It was the kind of thing you don't buy unless you want the whole room to know you bought it. Several people leaned in. Someone said, "Wow." Another whispered, "Is that real?" "It's beautiful," Elaine said, touching her chest. "Melissa, this is too much." Melissa shook her head. "You've done everything for us. This is nothing compared to that." Brent nodded proudly, as if he had paid for it. "Wait," Melissa added. She pulled out another envelope. "And this, 12 days in Aspen, the winter resort you love." More gasps, more smiles. Elaine covered her mouth like she might cry. Then Melissa turned to me. She walked over slowly, holding a small plastic poinsettia. The price sticker was still stuck under the pot. "And this is for you, Mom," she said. The room went silent. I felt everyone watching, not out of kindness, out of curiosity. They wanted to see what a mother looked like when her own daughter humiliated her in front of a room full of strangers. I looked at the flower. $10. Plastic. Bright red. Too shiny. The kind that sits in dollar stores long after Christmas ends. I met Melissa's eyes. She waited for me to react. Guilt, sadness, anything that made the contrast easier to swallow. I nodded once. "Thank you." That was all. No shaking voice, no wounded tone, just a fact. Melissa blinked like she expected more. Brent cleared his throat. Elaine gave me a polite smile that didn't hide her satisfaction. Someone coughed into their hand. People shifted in their seats, uncomfortable with how little the humiliation affected me. I placed the poinsettia on the table beside me. After a moment, I stood up. "Excuse me." I kept my voice steady. I didn't owe them explanations. I walked toward the hallway, and that's when I heard Elaine's voice. Quiet, but not quiet enough. "Melissa does so much for me," she said. "I don't know what her real mother is like." A few soft chuckles followed. Someone whispered something I didn't bother to catch. I stopped only long enough to register the words. They didn't hurt. They informed. People show you exactly who they are when they think you won't respond. I put on my coat without rushing. No one approached me. No one tried to stop me. Elaine lifted another gift bag and started opening it like nothing had happened. Melissa returned to her seat beside her as if this was the natural order of things. I opened the front door myself, stepped outside, and pulled it closed behind me. The laughter dulled instantly. The cold air was sharp but clean. I preferred it. I walked to my truck. The poinsettia felt too light in my hand, almost hollow. I set it gently on the passenger seat and turned the key. The engine started with a low rumble. As I drove away, the house stayed bright behind me. Voices kept rising inside, but they faded the farther I went. I didn't grip the wheel harder. I didn't shake. I didn't talk to myself. I've lived long enough to see patterns for what they are, and some patterns need endings. I glanced at the poinsettia again. It sat perfectly still, untouched. A small symbol of how my daughter saw me now. Useful when needed, forgotten when not. I wasn't angry. I was finished pretending I didn't notice. I drove home without turning on the radio. I didn't need noise, I needed clarity. The road was almost empty, and the snow on the ground made everything look cleaner than the night I had just walked out of. I kept both hands on the wheel and focused on the lines on the road. When you're my age, you learn that silence tells you more than people do. When I pulled into my driveway, the lights from the porch barely reached the front yard. I stepped out of the truck, grabbed the small plastic poinsettia, and walked to the door. The lock clicked in the same quiet way it always had. Inside, the house felt colder than the air outside. Not physically, emotionally. This was my third Christmas without Robert. No laughter, no tree, no warm lights. No one asking me how I felt or what I needed. I turned on the kitchen light. The soft yellow glow landed on the empty counter. I set the poinsettia down in the center of the table. It looked out of place immediately. Too bright, too cheap, too hollow for the home Robert and I built. I kept my eyes on it for a moment, just long enough to acknowledge what it meant. Melissa didn't care how I got home. She didn't ask if I ate. She didn't think about whether I had somewhere else to be. She gave her mother-in-law diamonds and gave me plastic. Not because she was cruel, because she was comfortable. That was the problem. I walked to the living room and sat on the edge of the sofa. The house made small settling sounds. Wood creaking, the distant hum of the heater, old pipes shifting with the cold. I didn't feel sad. I didn't feel jealous. I felt something cleaner, a kind of steady understanding. When people show you a pattern long enough, the shock disappears. Only recognition stays. My phone buzzed. The screen lit up with Melissa's name. I let it ring once before answering. "Mom," she said quickly, "do you still have the truck tomorrow?" "Yes." "Good. We need to borrow it in the morning. Brent's taking some supplies to his shop. We need the space." She didn't mention dinner. She didn't mention the necklace. She didn't mention the poinsettia. She didn't mention that I left without saying goodbye. Nothing. She moved on to what she always moved on to, what she needed. "What time?" I asked. 7, she said. "Early. We have a lot to do." I let a beat of silence pass. She didn't notice. "I'll think about it," I said. There was a short pause. "Think about it? Mom, we really need—" "I heard you," I said. She inhaled sharply, as if she was considering being polite, but couldn't find the energy for it. "Fine, just let me know." She hung up first. I set the phone down beside me. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel guilty about saying no. I didn't feel pressured to explain myself. I didn't feel the need to justify one simple boundary. Instead, I sat there and let the silence settle again, heavier this time, but steadier. I got up and walked back to the kitchen. The poinsettia was still sitting exactly where I left it. I didn't move it. I wanted to see it there. It reminded me of 15 years of doing things quietly, without asking for recognition, while Melissa drifted toward anyone who made her feel less responsible for her own choices. I opened a cabinet, took out a glass, and filled it with water. The kitchen clock ticked softly above the stove. I leaned on the counter and took a slow sip. It tasted cold and clean, cleaner than the conversations I'd had that evening. I thought about the people at Elaine's house, watching me the way people watch something uncomfortable but necessary, like they were relieved it wasn't happening to them. I thought about the way Brent looked at Melissa, as if her loyalty belonged to his side of the family. I thought about Elaine's voice, low and cutting, as if she enjoyed being the woman Melissa chose over her own mother. But I didn't replay the scene for long. I don't dwell. I gather information. That's the difference between reacting and deciding. I walked to the hallway closet, took out a folded quilt, and draped it over the arm of the sofa. I didn't feel like going upstairs. The main floor felt easier, simpler. I turned off the lights one by one until only the kitchen light remained. It illuminated the poinsettia, casting a small shadow on the table. Just enough of a reminder. I stood there and watched it. Not because it hurt me, because it no longer did. I picked up my phone again and checked the time. 11:42 p.m., Christmas Day, almost over. A pointless gift sitting on a table, a daughter who didn't notice I left, a son-in-law who would call me in the morning pretending to care about something other than what he could use, a pattern that had gone on for too long. I turned off the kitchen light and walked back to the living room. I lay down on the sofa, pulled the quilt over me, and let the quiet fill the space around me. The house was mine. The silence was mine. My decisions were mine. In the dark, I opened my eyes once more and said a single sentence out loud, not emotional, just clear. This ends now. I woke up before the sun came up. I didn't sleep much, but I wasn't tired. My mind was clear. The living room was still dark, except for the faint light coming from the kitchen window. The poinsettia sat on the table exactly where I'd left it. I walked past it without touching it. I didn't need a reminder. I already understood what last night meant. I made coffee, took one sip, and walked straight to the office room at the end of the hallway. I turned on the lamp. The familiar yellow light hit the filing cabinet against the wall. I hadn't opened that cabinet in a long time. Not because I was hiding anything, but because I didn't want to look at the list of everything I had carried alone. I pulled the drawer open. The folders were still lined up the way Robert and I used to organize them. College, wedding, car, mortgage, business, medical, insurance, taxes. You don't realize how many parts of someone's life you support until all the paperwork is staring back at you. I took out the first folder labeled college. Inside was the tuition agreement, the payment receipts, the meal plan statements, the housing bills. Melissa had gone out of state. She wanted freedom. We wanted her to have it. I added the numbers on a sticky note, $118,000. I set the folder aside. The second folder, wedding, venue deposit, catering balance, photographer, tux rental. Brent never paid for, flowers. Melissa insisted on upgrading. I remembered Robert leaning over the table that night saying, "It's her only wedding, Katie. Let her have it." I added the numbers. $64,000. Next, car. Melissa had called crying because her old car wouldn't start. She said she was stressed, overwhelmed. She needed help. I bought her a used SUV, reliable and safe. That was $12,500. Next, mortgage. Melissa and Brent had bought a house they couldn't afford. "Just until we get on our feet," Brent had said. I helped with the down payment and covered 6 months when Brent switched careers. Total, $110,000. Next, business bailout. The worst folder. I opened it and felt the weight of every late-night phone call Brent had made. I paid their past due bills so their shop wouldn't close. I covered the equipment lease he forgot to renew. I paid the accountant because Brent didn't understand quarterly taxes. Another $95,000. I stacked the folders next to each other. The total was already over $400,000. I stared at the numbers without blinking. I wasn't shocked. I wasn't angry. I was only now willing to see the full picture. I reached back into the drawer for the last folder. It didn't have a label, only a date. When I opened it, a single sheet of paper slid out. A loan document. $40,000. Borrowed under my name. My signature printed at the bottom. I looked at it for a long moment. My signature was wrong. The curve on the H was too round. The spacing too wide. Someone had tried to copy it, but didn't know that after Robert died, I changed the way I signed my name. I picked up the page and held it in the light. "That's not mine." I sat down and dialed the number on the loan statement. The automated system transferred me to a representative. A man answered. Thank you for calling First Horizon Lending. This is Mark. How can I help? I'm calling about a loan in my name, I said. $40,000, approved last spring. One moment while I pull it up. I heard typing. Yes, I see it. Catherine Hale, disbursed April 10th. I didn't apply for this loan. He paused. Ma'am, it shows an online application and a digital signature. That signature is not mine. He typed again. The application was submitted using your home address and an email associated with this account. Who submitted it? I said. We can't release personal information, he replied carefully, but I can tell you the contact name on the application. Tell me. It was submitted by your son-in-law, he said. Brent Carter. I didn't move. I didn't swallow. I didn't react. Read that name again. Brent Carter. I nodded once. Thank you. I'll need the full file emailed to me. Yes, ma'am. I'll send it now. I hung up. The phone felt heavier, not because of the information, but because of the accuracy of it. I picked up the document again and tapped it lightly on the table to straighten the edges. Brent had used my name, my credit, my address, my identity. He hadn't asked. He hadn't warned me. He assumed that because I paid every bill he handed me, I would absorb this one too. I stacked the loan paper on top of the other folders. $400,000 of help. 15 years of quiet support. One forged loan. One daughter who thanked her mother-in-law with diamonds and gave her real mother plastic. I sat back in the chair. The quiet of the house felt different now. Not empty, but honest. My phone buzzed. A new email arrived. The full loan file from the bank. I opened it. Application timestamp, IP address, contact number, electronic signature. Brent's email listed as the correspondent. Every part of it was clear. I looked at the stack of folders again. I didn't feel resentment. I felt understanding. People don't drain you all at once. They do it quietly, one request at a time, until the pattern becomes normal. I stood and began organizing the folders into a neat pile. When I closed the filing cabinet, the metal drawer slid shut with a soft click. A clean sound. A final one. This wasn't anger. This was clarity. And clarity always comes before a decision. I drove to Julia Tran's office early the next morning. I didn't schedule an appointment. I didn't need one. I had already made my decision, and I wasn't going to wait for anyone to validate it. The building was quiet, the parking lot still half empty. I walked in, nodded at the receptionist, and said, "Tell Julia I'm here. She'll want to see me." Julia stepped out of her office a minute later, glasses in hand. "Catherine, come in." She looked at my face the way experienced lawyers look at clients right before something big breaks. "You're here earlier than usual." "I have something for you," I said. I set the entire stack of folders on her desk. College, wedding, car, mortgage, business, and the loan Brent forged. Julia didn't touch anything at first. She watched me instead. That's why I trusted her. She listened with her eyes before she listened with her ears. "Tell me," she said. I opened the forged loan file. Brent used my name to take out $40,000 last spring. Julia's jaw tightened. "Show me." I slid the papers toward her. She read fast, efficient, her finger tracing the signature line. "This isn't your signature." "No," I said. "It's a bad imitation." Julia kept reading. "He used your address, your driver's license number, your email." She looked up. "Did you authorize this?" "No." She took a slow breath, the kind lawyers take when they're choosing between several options that all lead to consequences. "We can report this. It's fraud." "I'm not reporting it." Julia straightened. "Then what are you doing?" "I'm ending the pattern." Julia leaned back in her chair. "Explain." I opened the other folders and slid them across the desk one by one. College, $118,000. Wedding, $64,000. Car, $12,500. Mortgage, $110,000. Business bailout, $95,000. 15 years of support, quiet, consistent, expected. Julia lifted her eyebrows slightly. "This is substantial." It's a record, I said. A full history of how I've been financing 2 adults who call me only when they need something. Julia tapped the forged loan. And this was the final straw. No, I said. Last night was. I kept my voice level. Melissa gave her mother-in-law a $30,000 necklace and a 12-day Aspen trip. She gave me a $10 plastic flower. I paused. In front of a room full of people. Julia didn't react with shock. That's why she was the right attorney for me. She reacted with calculation. You're selling the house? Yes. She nodded once. Both properties? Yes, the main house and the rental. Julia folded her hands on the desk. Do you understand what this means? Melissa and Brent rely on you financially. They will come after you emotionally. They'll accuse you of punishing them. I'm not punishing anyone, I said. I'm ending a pattern. Julia nodded again, slower this time. I can have the listing paperwork drafted today. The market is strong. You'll get quick offers. I know. She opened her laptop. Before we proceed, I need access to any related communications between you and Melissa during the last year. I handed her my phone. Everything is here. Julia typed for a while, then paused. Catherine, did you set up a forwarding rule on your email? No. She turned the screen toward me. Someone did. Every email with the words loan, payment, balance, bank, or invoice was forwarded to another address. I stared at the screen. What address? Julia zoomed in. It's Brent's email. I didn't blink. How long? 7 months, she said. Maybe longer. I sat still, not surprised, just informed. Remove it. I will. And Catherine, this is serious. I know exactly how serious it is. She studied me again. You're calm. I'm clear. Julia typed a note. I'll contact Daniel Brooks. He's representing a client looking for a property your size. Serious buyer. That's fine. Julia adjusted her glasses. You understand Melissa will try to intervene. She can try, I said, but she won't succeed. She may accuse Brent of nothing. She may say you misunderstood. I didn't misunderstand anything. Julia nodded once more. When do you want the listing live? Today. She closed her laptop. Catherine, once this starts, there's no going back. There's nothing to go back to, I said. Julia let out a slow breath. All right, I'll move everything forward. Expect calls. I'm ready. I stood, gathered the folders, and placed them in a neat stack on her desk. Keep these. I don't need them anymore. You sure? Yes. I looked at the forged loan one more time. I've seen enough. Julia walked me to the door. I'll call as soon as the contracts are ready. I'll answer. When I stepped outside, the cold air hit my face sharply, but this time it felt different. Not empty, clean. My steps were steady as I walked back to the car. The poinsettia was still on the passenger seat where I left it. I didn't move it. I got home from Julia's office with one goal: finish what I started. I hung my coat, walked straight to the kitchen, and set my phone on the counter. The poinsettia was still sitting where I left it, untouched. I looked at it once, not because it bothered me, but because it reminded me why every call I was about to make needed to happen today. I opened my contacts and tapped the first number. Brent's landscaping contractor. He had been using my account for over a year, telling me the yard had to look good for clients. Clients he never had. A man answered, Hillcrest Landscaping. This is Catherine Hale, I said. Cancel the Carter maintenance contract. Effective immediately. He hesitated. Ma'am, the monthly payment already processed yesterday. It won't process again. All right, I'll close the account. I hung up. Next call. The accountant who handled Melissa's 3 small bookkeeping clients. Clients I handed to her years ago so she could have income. Clients she never appreciated. Morning, Catherine, the accountant said. I'm ending the subcontracting arrangement, I said. Transfer the clients back to me today. He paused. Did something happen? I'm simplifying my finances. He understood what that meant. I'll notify them. I hung up again. The third call was to a longtime client of mine, someone Melissa always assumed was hers. I took a breath and dialed. Hello? This is Catherine. Oh, hi. Everything okay? You'll be working directly with me again. Melissa won't be handling your books. That's perfectly fine. I trust you. Good. I ended the call. 3 contracts, 3 income streams Melissa depended on, gone in less than 10 minutes. I wasn't angry. I wasn't punishing her. I was removing myself from a system that expected me to carry adults who refused to carry themselves. My phone buzzed. Brent. I answered. Why are the landscaping people calling me? He demanded. They said you shut down the contract. Yes. You didn't even tell us. I don't need to, he scoffed. So what? You're just cutting us off? Out of nowhere? Not out of nowhere, I said. You're overreacting, he snapped. It's just a yard service. No, it's a pattern. He let out an annoyed breath. We rely on that help. I know. That's why it's ending. What is that supposed to mean? It means you'll adjust. I hung up. He called back immediately. I declined. 30 seconds later, Melissa called. I answered. Mom, what's going on? She said, her voice already tight. Brent says you canceled the yard service. Why? Because I'm simplifying. What does that mean? She asked. It means I'm reducing the number of people who depend on me. There was a long pause. I could hear her breathing shift. Fear, not anger. Mom, those clients you gave me, 3 of them just emailed me that you're taking them back. Why would you do that without talking to me? I made the decision. But that's my income, she burst out. You'll find another, I said. Mom, that's not fair. You know we're dealing with a lot. Brent's shop has been slow and I know, I said, and I've supported both of you for 15 years. We appreciate it, she rushed. No, I corrected. You expected it. She stopped talking. I continued, calm and steady. Your financial problems are no longer my responsibility. Mom, she tried again. I'm busy, I said. We'll talk another time. I hung up. 10 seconds later, another call came in. A neighbor I barely knew, someone who followed Elaine on social media. I saw something funny, she said. Elaine posted pictures from last night, and she was telling people at the grocery store that Melissa treated her to that Aspen trip because she's the only mother figure Melissa really has. I waited. I wanted to hear the rest. And she said the necklace was a thank you gift because they've been helping Melissa through financial stress. Funny because I thought Melissa told me she was doing fine. She told you that? I asked. Yes, she always says you barely help her, that they've been managing everything alone. Thank you for letting me know, I said. No problem. I just thought you should hear it. I ended the call and set the phone down. The kitchen felt very still. I stood there a moment, absorbing what the neighbor said, not because it surprised me, but because it confirmed everything I already knew. Melissa had been hiding her dependence. Brent had been hiding his irresponsibility. Elaine had been hiding her influence behind sweet smiles and expensive jewelry. And together, they had built a story where I was the cold, distant mother who didn't help. I looked at the poinsettia again. Still bright, still cheap, still sitting there like the perfect symbol of how little they thought I needed or deserved. My phone buzzed again. A long text from Melissa. Mom, please call me. I don't understand what you're doing. We need the truck today. Brent is upset. Can you please just explain? I typed back one sentence. Pick up the truck at 11. She replied instantly. 11? That's too late. Brent. I put the phone face down. The truth was simple. Melissa wasn't scared of losing the truck. She was scared of losing access, losing control, losing the version of me who always said yes. I walked to the living room and sat down. I didn't feel guilty. I didn't feel conflicted. I felt something else, something steady and overdue. The next morning, my phone started ringing before I even finished my first cup of coffee. Brent's name flashed across the screen. I didn't answer. I let it ring until it stopped. 10 seconds later, he called again and again. On the 4th call, I picked up. "What are you doing?" Brent snapped. "Julia called me. She said the house is going on the market. Is that true?" "Yes." "You can't do that." His voice cracked. "Melissa and I need stability right now." "You've had 15 years of stability," I said. "You didn't use it." "You're being unreasonable." "No," I said. "I'm being clear." He exhaled loudly. "You're selling the house out of spite. This isn't about spite." "Then what is it about?" he demanded. "Priorities," I said. "That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard," he shot back. "You're tanking the family over one Christmas misunderstanding." "No," I said calmly. "I'm correcting a long-term mistake." Brent let out a low curse. "You're impossible." "I'm busy," I said. "Don't call again unless it's necessary." I hung up. He called back twice. I declined both. I walked to the dining table where the folders were still stacked. The paperwork Julia emailed had arrived overnight. The listing contracts, the signatures, the disclosures, all waiting for my approval. Before I could sit down to review them, I heard my driveway gravel crunching outside. Someone was here. I stood by the window and saw Melissa's car pulling in, too fast, like she was scared I'd run away before she reached the door. She stepped out immediately and rushed toward the porch without knocking. She tried to open the door, found it locked, and knocked hard. "Mom, open the door!" I unlocked it and stepped back. "Come in." She walked inside, hair messy, eyes wide, not dressed for anything except panic. "Why are you doing this?" she demanded. "Brent said you're selling the house. Please tell me he misunderstood." "He didn't," she blinked. "Mom, are you angry because of Christmas?" "No." "Then why are you acting like this?" she said desperately. "I'm not acting," I said. "I'm making decisions." Melissa took a step closer. "If this is about the flower—" "It isn't." "Then what do you want from us?" she asked. "Nothing," I said. "That's the point." She opened her mouth, then closed it. "You're talking like you don't care." "I care enough to stop enabling both of you." Melissa shook her head. "Mom, this is sudden. It's extreme." "No," I said. "Extreme is a forged loan." Her face went blank. "What loan?" "The $40,000 Brent took using my name." Her breath stopped. "He wouldn't do that." "He did." Did you ask him?" "I confirmed it with the bank," I said. "They read his name to me." Melissa swallowed hard. "Brent said that wasn't—" "He said you misunderstood something." "I didn't misunderstand anything." She looked around the room like she needed something to hold on to. "Why didn't you come to us? Why didn't you tell me yesterday?" "You were busy," I said. "You didn't notice me leave." She went silent. I continued. "I showed up. You ignored me. You gave your mother-in-law a $30,000 necklace. You gave me plastic. Not because you hate me, because you don't think of me at all." "That's not true," Melissa whispered. "Then tell me what is true." She looked at the floor. I don't know." I watched her, calm, not angry, not emotional, just present. "Melissa, I've supported you and Brent for 15 years. Quietly, completely. You call only when you need something. You treat my support like a guarantee." "That's not fair," she said weakly. "It's accurate." Melissa pressed her fingers against her forehead. "Brent said people are talking about you, saying you're selling everything out of revenge." "People always talk," I said. "It doesn't change facts." She tried again. "Brent thinks if he reaches out to the buyer first, maybe he can stall things. Maybe—" "He contacted Daniel?" I interrupted. "Yes, he said he was trying to manage the situation." I nodded. "Of course he did." Melissa looked up. "Mom, please. You know Brent tries to help." "Brent tries to control," I corrected. "There's a difference." She flinched. "So what happens now? You just sell everything, leave us with nothing?" "You have a house," I said. "A business, jobs, cars. You're not children." "But we can't—" "You can," I said. "You just never had to." A long silence followed. Melissa's breathing was uneven. Her eyes were glossy, not from sadness, from realization. I don't understand why you're doing all of this at once, she said quietly, because dragging it out would only prolong the dependency. That sounds cold. No, I said. It sounds healthy. She looked at me again, searching for softness I didn't offer. Mom, are you sure? Yes. She stepped back a little. Brent said you're being manipulated by Julia, that she's putting these ideas in your head. I lifted an eyebrow. Brent doesn't influence my decisions. Why would Julia? Melissa looked embarrassed. He said she's trying to take advantage of you. She's protecting me from both of you, I said plainly. That's her job. Melissa stared at the floor. After a moment, she said, I don't want to lose you. You haven't lost me, I said softly. You lost access. Her eyes filled, but no tears fell. She wasn't crying. She was realizing. I need time, she whispered. You'll have it. She walked to the door slowly, as if the weight of her own choices had finally settled on her shoulders. Before she stepped outside, she turned back. Brent's going to be furious. He already is, I said. And you're not scared of that? No, I said, because none of this depends on his approval. She didn't reply. She opened the door, stepped into the cold, and left without another word. I closed the door behind her, quietly, deliberately. I was going through the listing documents on my laptop when the landline rang. I rarely use that phone. Hardly anyone has the number. I glanced at the caller ID, Brooks Realty. Daniel Brooks, the buyer representative Julia mentioned yesterday. I picked up. This is Catherine. A man's voice came through, professional and steady. Good morning. I'm calling to confirm a few details before we finalize the showing schedule. I nodded, even though he couldn't see it. Go ahead. He paused. Your assistant told me you were unavailable earlier. I wanted to double-check the correct times. I straightened. My who? Your assistant, he repeated. She answered your home phone an hour ago. No one answers this phone but me. He hesitated. The woman introduced herself as your assistant. She instructed me to leave all sale documents with her and not to disturb you today. Every muscle in my back tightened. Describe her voice. Female, probably 30s, confident, direct. He lowered his tone. She sounded familiar, actually. I've heard her at an open house before. My grip on the receiver tightened. What exactly did she tell you? She claimed you were overwhelmed and needed her to manage all communications. She also tried to reschedule the walkthrough without checking with you. My jaw locked. Only 2 people had keys to this house, me and Melissa. I kept my voice level. Where are you right now? In my office, he answered. Do you want me to wait before contacting the buyer? Yes. Hold everything. My tone sharpened. Do not release any documents to anyone except me or my attorney. Understood. Thank you, I added, clipped but controlled. I hung up and looked around the house. Nothing seemed disturbed, no lights out of place, no drawers open. But someone had been inside, someone comfortable enough to pick up my phone, impersonate me, and attempt to intercept a real estate transaction. My heart didn't race, my hands didn't shake. When clarity hits at my age, it arrives like a clean blade, cold, precise, undeniable. I grabbed my keys and walked out the door. The drive home felt shorter than usual. I parked in the driveway, stepped out, and moved toward the garage. Before opening it, I stood still and listened. Silence. I unlocked the side door and walked inside. The smell hit me first. Paper, dust, and something faint, like cheap cologne. I flicked the light. Boxes were stacked differently than I remembered. A bin that had been closed yesterday now sat slightly open. A file drawer wasn't fully pushed in. My stomach didn't drop. I didn't freeze. I recognized the truth instantly. Melissa and Brent had been here. I stepped forward and inspected the open bin. Folders had been shuffled through. A few envelopes lay on the floor. Someone had been searching. Fast, sloppy, desperate. Then I noticed it. the red light on the small security camera mounted above the shelves. I had installed it months ago when raccoons kept getting into the garage. I had forgotten it was even there, and it was blinking, recording. I pulled out my phone, opened the camera app, and connected to the feed. The timeline bar loaded. 3 hours of motion-detected clips. I tapped the first one. Melissa appeared on screen, stepping into my garage with her spare key. She didn't knock. She didn't hesitate. She walked in like she lived here. Brent followed close behind, shutting the door behind him. Melissa pulled off her gloves and moved straight to the shelving unit where I kept old financial files. She didn't look around. She didn't stop to think. She opened the bin and started rifling through folders with a speed that only guilt can produce. Brent paced behind her. "Hurry," he muttered, annoyed, as if the house they invaded belonged to him. Melissa snapped, "I know where she keeps everything. Just give me a second." Her voice shook, not from fear, but from entitlement. I watched them pull documents out, skim them, toss some aside, pocket others. At one point, Melissa walked toward the landline mounted on the wall, lifted the receiver, and answered it. Her expression sharpened. "Yes, this is Catherine's assistant," she told whoever called. "I can handle the details." My hand tightened around my phone. I watched the rest of the clip. Melissa rewound the security tape. She thought she erased it. She didn't know the system had cloud backup. I shut off the playback. I didn't feel betrayal. I didn't feel heartbreak. Those emotions belonged to people who still expected loyalty from the ones hurting them. I expected nothing. I only confirmed what I already knew. Footsteps sounded behind me. Not in the garage, outside. Then a soft knock on the door leading to the mudroom. "Mom?" Melissa's voice filtered in. "Are you home?" Of course she came now. Of course she pretended nothing happened. I opened the door slowly. She stood there, nervously adjusting her sleeves, choosing her expression carefully, like she was preparing for a small performance. "Hi, Brent and I just came by to see if you needed help with anything, since things have been tense." "Tense?" I repeated. She forced a smile. "You know, with everything going on." My tone didn't shift. "I'm aware. I tried calling earlier," she continued, "but the phone kept ringing. Maybe you didn't hear it?" I heard what I needed to. Her eyebrows tightened. "What does that mean?" I stepped aside and pointed toward the garage without raising my voice. "Come in. I want to show you something." She hesitated. "What is it?" "Your work," I replied. She froze. She didn't move forward. She didn't step back. Her silence told me everything. She knew exactly what she had done. "Melissa," I continued, my voice steady, "you walked into my home and pretended to speak for me. You tried to interfere with the sale. You searched through my documents." She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. "You had no right." Her throat tightened as she tried to form an excuse, but I didn't wait for one. "Keys," I instructed. "Now." Her eyes widened. "Mom, your keys." Her hand trembled as she reached into her pocket and placed the keyring into my palm, the metal cold against my skin. I closed my fist around it. "This ends today." Melissa whispered, "Please don't do this." I already did. I kept my hand closed around the keys Melissa had just surrendered. The metal felt cold, but not as cold as the silence between us. She stood in the doorway, unsure whether to step forward or run. I didn't move. I didn't raise my voice. I simply turned and walked back into the garage. "Come here," I instructed. Melissa hesitated, but she followed. Guilt has a way of pulling people forward even when fear tells them to stay behind. I pointed to the storage bin she had left half open during her search. "Recognize that?" Her eyes flicked to it, then away. I don't know what you think you saw." I reached for my phone and opened the security footage again. "I don't think. I know." The first clip played. Melissa walked into my garage on the screen, moving with an ease that only comes from entitlement. Brent followed behind her like he owned the place. Melissa stared at the video. Her breath caught. She didn't blink. "You were here," I stated. "You went through my documents. You handled my files. You answered my phone." "I wasn't," she tried, her voice cracking. "You were," I cut in. "And you knew exactly what you were doing." She swallowed hard. "Mom, Brent told me—" I tapped the screen, switching to the next clip. "Stop blaming Brent." The footage showed her pulling folders from the shelf, flipping through them, tossing some to the floor. Brent hovered behind her, impatient, telling her to move faster. Melissa looked nothing like the daughter I raised. She looked like someone who believed everything in that garage belonged to her. She covered her mouth with her hand. "I didn't know there were cameras." "You weren't supposed to," I replied. Her eyes flicked toward the red light blinking above the shelving unit. "You were recording?" "No," I corrected. "The camera was recording. I simply remembered it existed." She flinched. I stepped closer to the file bin and picked up the folder she had left half open. Receipts spilled out, college payments, mortgage adjustments, past due notices I had cleared for them. "You weren't looking for anything specific. You were looking to see how much you could lose." "I wasn't—" "You were," I repeated. Melissa's shoulders hunched slightly. "Mom, I just wanted to understand what was happening with the house. You could have asked. You wouldn't tell me. You didn't try." She blinked rapidly, struggling to form the right words. "Brent thought the buyer was moving too fast. He wanted to make sure—" "Brent wanted control," I interrupted. "And you helped him." Her face crumpled for a moment before she forced it still again. "I wasn't trying to hurt you." "You weren't trying to respect me either." Melissa stepped back, hugging her arms around herself. "Please listen. I panicked, okay? I thought if I could see the papers, maybe I could understand." "You weren't looking for understanding," I replied. "You were looking for leverage." She shook her head violently. No, that's not true." I tapped my phone again and replayed the section where she picked up my landline. "Explain this part, then." Melissa's voice from the recording filled the garage. "Yes, this is Catherine's assistant. I can handle everything." Melissa whispered, "I shouldn't have done that." "No," I agreed. "You shouldn't have." Footsteps echoed behind us. Brent stepped into the garage, eyes narrowing when he realized the situation. "What's going on?" I didn't turn toward him. "You know what's going on." He raised his chin. "I came here because Melissa said you were upset." "I'm not upset," I replied. "I'm informed." Brent let out a small laugh, an ugly one. "You're blowing things out of proportion." I showed him the phone screen. His face drained of color. That's taken out of context." "No, it's taken in real time," I corrected. Melissa's voice trembled. "Brent, stop." He ignored her. "You snooped on us without telling us? That's illegal." "The camera is in my home," I reminded him. "You entered without permission. You searched my property. You impersonated me. You intercepted communication with the buyer. There's nothing illegal about me knowing what happens in my own house." Brent froze. I turned to Melissa. "He knew you were doing this." She whispered, "I didn't want to. He kept telling me." I lifted my hand slightly. "You're responsible for your choices. He didn't force you to pick up my phone." Melissa's mouth opened, then closed again. No words came out. I pointed toward the doorway. "Both of you, out of my garage." Brent's jaw tightened. "You can't talk to us like that." "I just did." Melissa reached toward me. "Mom, please, we can fix this. We just need to talk." "No," I responded. "You need to leave." Brent muttered something under his breath, but he stepped back. Melissa hesitated. She looked at me the way people look at something they have finally, painfully realized they cannot manipulate. "I didn't mean for it to go this far," she whispered. "It went exactly as far as you pushed it," I answered. I walked to the door and held it open. "Out." Melissa stepped outside first. Brent followed reluctantly. Before he crossed the threshold, I added, "If either of you enter my home again without permission, the next person you speak to won't be me. It will be law enforcement." Brent stiffened. Melissa lowered her eyes. "I didn't call them. I didn't text. I didn't invite anyone." But by late afternoon, I saw Melissa's car pulling into my driveway again. Brent was with her. Of course he was. People like him never miss a chance to defend their narrative. I stood in the living room, arms steady at my sides, watching their shadows move past the curtains. A sharp knock followed. "Mom?" Melissa's voice wavered. "Can we talk?" I opened the door without a word and stepped back. They walked in slowly, like they were entering a courtroom. They were. Mine. I pointed to the sofa. "Sit." They sat. I walked to the dining table, picked up the stack of folders, the entire 15-year history, and placed them one by one on the coffee table in front of them. Each folder landed with a soft, blunt sound that filled the silence. Melissa flinched at every one. Brent tried to look unfazed, but his eyes kept darting between the paperwork and my face. He knew this was bad. He just didn't know how bad yet. I sat in the chair across from them. "Let's review," I began, my voice even, steady. "No interruptions. You'll listen first." Melissa clasped her hands together. Brent leaned back, arms crossed. He thought posture would protect him. It wouldn't. I opened the first folder. College, $118,000, tuition, housing, meal plans, flights home, covered entirely by me. Melissa murmured, "Mom, you never told me the total." "You never asked." I opened the next folder. Wedding, $64,000, venue, catering, photography, last-minute upgrades you insisted on. All paid. Brent scoffed quietly. "That was years ago." "Correct," I replied. "Years you spent pretending you were financially independent." I moved to the third folder. Car, $12,500. The SUV you said you needed because your old one was unreliable. Melissa stared at her knees. I remember. "I do too." Next folder. Mortgage assistance, $110,000. You bought a home you couldn't afford. I kept you from losing it. Brent opened his mouth. "We would have figured something out." "You didn't," I cut in. "I did." I opened the business folder. Business bailout, $95,000, past due bills, equipment payments, taxes you forgot existed, payroll you couldn't cover. You promised to reimburse me. You never did. Brent lifted his chin. "Those were investments." "No, those were rescues." His jaw clenched. I picked up the last sheet, the forged loan. And finally, $40,000. Debt taken out in my name, without my knowledge, without my consent, using my identity. Melissa whispered, "Mom, please." "This," I continued, holding the page up, "is the moment the pattern crossed a line." Brent leaned forward. "It wasn't like that." I locked eyes with him. "Say your version." He shifted. "It was a misunderstanding. I filled out the form because we were desperate. Melissa thought you would help if you knew how much we were struggling." Melissa's head snapped toward him. "I never said that." "You implied—" he started. "No," she interrupted, trembling. "I never asked you to fake my mother's signature." Their voices rose, but I didn't. "Both of you were involved," I stated. "He filled out the form. You knew enough to let him do it." Melissa's eyes filled with panic. "I didn't know he submitted it. I just thought—" "You thought I'd keep paying," I finished for her, "the same way I always have." She covered her face with both hands. "Mom, please, let me explain." "You had your chance to explain," I replied. "Last night and earlier today. Instead, you broke into my home. You searched my files. You impersonated me on the phone with the buyer." Brent snapped, "You're twisting things." I lifted my phone and pressed play. The security footage played on full volume. Brent pacing through my garage. Melissa digging through bins. Her voice on the phone. "This is Catherine's assistant. She'll handle everything." Brent rushing her. "Hurry, she'll be back soon." Their faces drained. I turned off the video and set the phone down. "No one is twisting anything. The truth is recorded." Melissa stared at the floor, hands trembling. "Mom, I'm so sorry." "No," I responded calmly. "You're overwhelmed, not sorry." She looked up slowly, her eyes wet, but not yet crying. "What do you want me to do? Tell me. I'll do anything." "I'm not giving you instructions," I replied. "I'm giving you facts." I leaned forward slightly. "And now I have 3 questions. Melissa went still. Brent shifted uncomfortably. I raised one finger. 1. When was the last time you asked me how I was doing? Not what you needed, not what your bills were. How I was. Melissa opened her mouth. No sound came out. I raised a second finger. 2. When was the last time you visited me because you wanted to spend time with me? Not because something broke or you needed a loan or you wanted me to fix your relationship. Melissa's lips parted again. Still nothing. I raised a third finger, slow and deliberate. And 3. Do you love me? Or do you love what I pay for? The room collapsed into silence. Melissa broke first. Her breath hitched, shoulders shaking, but she didn't cry. She couldn't. Shame dries tears before they fall. She looked at Brent like she needed rescue, but he stared straight ahead, jaw tight. I don't know, she whispered. Brent muttered, This is ridiculous. You're manipulating her. No, I replied. I'm clarifying. I turned back to Melissa. You stopped appreciating. You started expecting. And then you started demanding. And when you ran out of demands, you started taking. Melissa covered her mouth, voice breaking through her fingers. Mom, I didn't mean... You meant exactly what your actions showed, I corrected. That's how adults are judged. Brent stood abruptly. We're leaving. You are, I agreed, calm as ever. Melissa stayed seated for a moment, staring at the pile of receipts, 15 years of proof, lined up in front of her like a verdict. She finally stood. I don't know what to say. There's nothing left to say today. She nodded slowly, as if each inch of movement cost her something. I walked them to the door. No yelling, no theatrics, just truth. Melissa stepped outside first. Brent followed, refusing to look at me. Before I closed the door, Melissa turned back. Mom, I don't want to lose you. You didn't lose me, I replied. You lost the version of me who accepted this. Her breath caught. Melissa came back that same evening. I heard her car before she even reached the porch. Fast, uneven, the way people drive when they're desperate. I didn't rush to the door. I waited until she knocked. Mom, her voice cracked. Please open. I unlocked the door and stepped back. She stood there with her coat half-zipped, hair messy from crying, breath shaking. She looked smaller than she had earlier, not physically, but in certainty. Brent wasn't with her this time. She moved inside quickly. I need to talk to you. You already did, I replied. No, not like this. I closed the door behind her and remained standing. She didn't sit. She paced once, then faced me. I'm sorry, she blurted out, the words pushing out unevenly. I'm so sorry for everything, for the garage, for the loan, for last night. I messed up. I know I did. I watched her quietly. She wiped her face. I shouldn't have taken your keys. I shouldn't have lied. I shouldn't have let Brent do any of it. I didn't know it would get this bad. You didn't care enough to stop it, I corrected. She nodded, tears building, but not yet falling. I know. Silence stretched for a beat. She stepped closer. Mom, I don't want to lose you. I swear I don't. You didn't lose me, I said. You lost access to me. Her breath hitched. I'll change. I'll do anything. Please, just tell me what you want me to do. I don't want anything from you, I replied. That's the point. She looked shattered for a second, her mouth opening but no words coming. I continued, calm and steady. Your apology is late, but it's not meaningless. It shows you're scared of the consequences, not ashamed of the choices. That's not true, she whispered. You still haven't answered the third question, I reminded her. She looked at the floor. I can't answer it. Then you understand what happens next. Melissa grabbed my arm gently, as if holding on would anchor her. Mom, I'm begging you. Don't shut me out. Don't sell the house. Don't leave. I'm not leaving, I replied. I'm changing the rules. I don't know how to handle that, she whispered. You'll learn, I said. You're a grown woman. Her breathing deepened, heavy with panic. Brent's furious. He thinks you're trying to destroy us. He's angry because he lost control, I replied. She shook her head. He shouldn't have done the loan. He shouldn't have gone into the garage. He shouldn't have told me you were being dramatic. Everything spiraled and— He led you, I cut in. But he didn't drag you. Melissa quieted. I took a small step toward the hallway, making the conversation shift. I'm not going to argue with you. I'm not going to comfort you. I'm not going to explain myself again. She followed me with her eyes. What do I do now? You grow up. Melissa covered her mouth with both hands. I don't know how. You start by standing without leaning on me, I replied. She took a shaky breath. So that's it? After everything? After all the years? Just like that? No, I said. Not after all the years. After all the patterns. Her shoulders collapsed. Mom, can we please start over? In time, I replied. Not today. She hesitated, tears finally spilling over. They weren't dramatic. They weren't loud. They came from realization, not pain. Please don't push me out, she whispered again. I shook my head lightly. I'm not pushing you out. I'm stepping back. The space between us is the space you created. She swallowed, unable to respond. I walked her toward the door slowly, not unkind, but unmoved. She stopped right at the threshold. Mom, I love you. I know, I answered. But love without respect isn't enough. She closed her eyes. Can I come tomorrow? No. When? When you're ready to stand without asking me to carry you, I said. She nodded once, painfully. Okay. I reached for the door. She looked up one last time. Mom, please don't stop loving me. I'm doing this because I love you, I replied softly. Not because I'm angry. A long silence passed, the kind that changes people. Then I closed the door. Not loud, not harsh, just final. The click of the lock echoed through the house, not as punishment, as peace. I leaned against the wall for a brief moment, letting the quiet settle. The house felt still, but not lonely. It felt right. For the first time in years, I wasn't reacting. I was choosing. I moved into the Snow Pine cabin 3 days after signing the sale documents. There was no ceremony, no emotional packing, no dramatic goodbye. I loaded what I needed into the truck: clothes, files, cookware, and the essentials for a quiet life. The poinsettia stayed behind. I left it on the kitchen counter the same way Melissa left it for me, without thought. The drive to the lake was long and clean. Snow covered the road in thin sheets, but I didn't rush. When you are finally walking toward a decision you should have made years ago, time doesn't feel heavy. It feels accurate. The cabin sat at the edge of the lake, half hidden behind tall pines, roof lined with fresh snow. A small porch, a single window facing the water. Exactly the opposite of the life I had been living. Quiet instead of chaotic, chosen instead of expected. I unlocked the door and stepped inside. The air was cold, but honest. No secrets, no arguments waiting behind it. Just space. I turned on the heater, set my bags inside, and walked around the small living room. Wood floors, a stone fireplace, a simple kitchen. Everything in its place. Everything mine. I opened the windows to let the cold air in for a moment. It hit my face sharply, the way truth hits when you stop running from it. I spent the morning unpacking methodically. Clothes lined the closet. Plates went onto shelves. The quilt Robert and I bought years ago went on the bed. I hung my keys by the door, only one set. No spare for anyone else. By noon, the cabin felt settled enough to breathe in. I stepped outside, zipped my coat, and walked toward the lake. The snow crunched under my boots. The water was still, a perfect mirror. I stood there and let the quiet sink in. This wasn't loneliness. This was the first time in years that silence belonged to me. Footsteps approached from the trail behind me. Slow, steady, familiar in rhythm. Someone older. I turned as a woman in her 70s walked toward me with a scarf wrapped tightly around her neck. "You must be the new neighbor," she called out. her voice warm but firm. "I am," I replied. She offered her hand. "Barbara Miles. I live in the cabin up the hill." "Catherine," I introduced myself. Barbara smiled. "I've been waiting to meet you. New faces don't show up out here often." We walked back toward the porch together. She glanced at the cabin. "Nice place. Quiet. You here for a short stay, or are you settling in?" "Settling." Barbara nodded like she had expected that answer. "Something about women our age. When we move somewhere alone, it usually means we're done with something. Or someone." I didn't deny it. She looked at me closely. "You look like someone who walked away from a storm." I did. "Family?" "Yes." She let out a slow exhale. "We all have one of those." We sat on the porch steps. Barbara folded her gloves neatly in her lap. "I actually know your daughter," she said. "Melissa, right? She used to come up here a few years ago with friends." I turned my head slightly. I didn't react. I waited. Barbara continued carefully. "There was a summer. She visited the cabin I was renting to a friend. I remember hearing her on the phone. She was arguing with someone. I didn't mean to listen, but the walls in those places are thin." I remained still. "She was shouting," Barbara added. "Something about you not doing enough. Something about you being too stubborn to give her more money. She sounded angry, entitled." I felt nothing sharp, only confirmation. Barbara looked at me apologetically. "I shouldn't repeat things like that. But when I saw her talking that way about you, it bothered me. She was talking like you were a burden, not a mother." "That sounds accurate," I replied. We were quiet for a moment. Barbara spoke again, softer. "I don't know what happened recently, but I'll tell you this. You didn't deserve whatever she did to you. I've lived long enough to recognize patterns, and she was too comfortable blaming you." I glanced at the lake. She wasn't alone in that. "Her husband?" Barbara guessed. "Yes." "Mothers like us," she continued. "We give until people forget we're allowed to stop." I met her eyes. I stopped. Barbara smiled gently. "Good. Some people won't change until the person they're using steps away." We sat there in the cold a while longer, watching the lake. No rush, no pressure, just understanding between two women who had survived similar storms. Eventually, Barbara stood. "If you need anything, I'm up the road. And Catherine, whatever brought you here, this place will help you heal it. Quiet doesn't lie." I nodded. "Thank you." She walked away slowly, boots crunching in the snow. I watched her disappear behind the pines. When I stepped back into the cabin, the heater had warmed the air. I took off my coat, hung it neatly, and stood in the small kitchen. For the first time in years, I wasn't thinking about who might call, who needed something, or who would break a boundary I set. I was thinking about myself. I prepared a simple dinner: vegetables, broth, bread, nothing fancy. I ate at the small table by the window, watching the lake darken slowly as evening settled in. My phone stayed face down, no buzzing, no demands, no apologies shaped like manipulations. I washed the dishes, dried them carefully, and set them in their place. Before bed, I stepped outside again for one last breath of cold air. The lake was quiet. The world was still. And I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time: freedom. Not running away, not hiding, just choosing myself for once. I closed the door behind me and locked it. One key, one home, one life, mine. January passed quickly at Snowpine. The days were short, the air sharp, and the silence steady. I settled into routines that belonged only to me. Morning walks by the lake, cooking meals without rushing, reading by the window while the cabin heater hummed softly. No interruptions, no demands, no emergencies disguised as phone calls. Then the consequences began to surface. The first message came from one of Brent's former suppliers, a short voicemail. "We can't reach Brent. His shop is overdue on payments again. If you have any way to contact him, let him know we're closing the account." I deleted it. The second came from a mutual acquaintance, someone who followed local business gossip. Brent lost his big contract, something about tax issues and missed deadlines. He's blaming everyone but himself. I deleted that too. By the third call, I didn't even listen. I turned off voicemail entirely. People like Brent always look for somewhere to place the blame once the structure holding them up disappears, and for 15 years, that structure had been me. I wasn't the structure anymore. A week later, an email arrived from the school district. Melissa had applied for a clerical job, entry-level, modest hours, not glamorous, not impressive, honest work. The kind Melissa used to call beneath her. The email wasn't directed to me on purpose. It was an automated response sent to an address she used years ago that still forwarded to mine. I didn't reply. I didn't interfere. She was finding her footing, without leaning on me. I kept my distance, exactly as I promised. One evening, near the end of the month, I returned from a walk and saw something sitting on the porch. A small envelope. No stamp. No name on the front. Just placed carefully under the doormat. I lifted it slowly, brought it inside, and set it on the kitchen table. The same table that had become symbolic of my new life. Simple, calm, and untouched by old patterns. I opened the envelope. Inside was a handwritten letter. Neat, slow handwriting. Melissa's. Mom, I know you don't want calls right now. I'm writing because it forces me to think before I speak. I need that. You were right about everything, all of it. I read the sentence twice, not because it surprised me, but because I knew how hard it must have been for her to write it. The letter continued. Brent and I are no longer doing well. He lost the shop contract last week. He won't take responsibility. He keeps telling everyone that you set him up to fail. I know now that isn't true. You didn't ruin anything. You just stopped fixing what he kept breaking. I took a sip of water. I kept reading. I applied for a job at the school. They hired me. It's not what I pictured for my life, but it's the first thing I've earned without asking anyone for money. It feels strange, but good. Another quiet line. I know now that I treated you like a resource, not a mother. I thought your support was endless. I thought you would always say yes. I didn't see you. I only saw what you could do. My throat tightened, not from sadness, but from the truth finally being spoken without excuses. There was more. I kept the poinsettia. I put it on my desk to remind me of the worst version of myself. I want to remember what I did so I never repeat it. I paused. She understood the weight of it, at least partly. Then her final paragraphs. I'm not writing to beg you for money. I'm not asking you to cancel the sale. I'm not asking for anything. I just want you to know that I finally understand why you walked away, and I understand why you closed the door. You didn't stop loving me. You stopped letting me use you. I'm working on myself. I don't expect a reply. I just hope one day you'll want to see me again. Love, Melissa. I folded the letter and read it again from the beginning, not to double-check her words, but to absorb the shift in her tone. There was no manipulation, no pressure, no plea dressed as apology. For the first time, Melissa was standing without leaning. No excuses, no demands, just honesty. I reached for a sheet of paper, sat at the small cabin desk, and began writing a response. My pen moved slowly, not because I hesitated, but because I chose every word deliberately. Melissa, I received your letter. I appreciate the clarity in your words. You're taking responsibility for your choices. That matters. It's a beginning. I paused, then continued. Healing takes time. Distance is part of that time. I'm not ready to come back. You're not ready either. You're building something new. Do it for yourself, not for me. I signed my name firmly, Catherine. Then something inside me settled. Not forgiveness, not closure, but alignment. Truth has a way of putting everything back where it belongs. I folded the letter and placed it in an envelope. I wrote her name on the front, but I didn't send it. Not because I was angry, because timing matters, and growth needs space. I placed the envelope in the top drawer of my desk. It sat beside a set of clean notepads and an unopened pen, waiting, Not forgotten, just not given yet. Outside, the lake shimmered under the late winter light. Snow drifted softly through the air. I stepped outside and breathed it in, steady, cold, uncomplicated. My phone sat inside the cabin, silent. No one needed me. No one expected anything. No one was leaning on me. For the first time in years, that silence felt like peace, not punishment. I closed the door to the cabin gently. This time, it wasn't closing someone out. It was closing everything that came before. If you stayed with me until the very last moment, thank you. Your time means something, and I'm grateful you spent it here with me tonight. If this story touched you, or made you think of someone you love, feel free to like the video, subscribe to Grandma Life Stories, and share your thoughts in the comments. I always love hearing where you're watching from and what part of the story stayed with you. Take care of yourself out there, and I'll meet you again in the next story. Good night, and thank you for being here.